Have a good day. Today you will learn the nature of roots of quadratic equation. For our objectives, here are the objectives that we need to obtain after we discuss this topic. First, express the given quadratic equation to its standard form. Second, identify the value of a, b, and c of a quadratic equation. And the last one, use the discriminant in characterizing the roots of quadratic equation. Now, from our quadratic formula, which is x is equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, the value of the expression b squared minus 4ac is what we call the discriminant of the quadratic equation that is written into its standard form, wherein the value of this discriminant will use to determine the nature of roots of a quadratic equation. Okay, now, how can we determine the nature of roots of quadratic equation? First is by just simply always remembering these four different conditions of the value of our discriminant. If the value of the discriminant is equal to 0, then the roots are real and equal. Next, if the value of our discriminant is greater than 0 and a perfect square number, then the roots are rational but not equal. If the value of the discriminant is greater than 0 but not a perfect square number, then the roots are irrational but not equal. And the last condition is that if the value of our discriminant is less than 0, then it has no real root. Now, the following are the steps in determining the nature of roots of a quadratic equation. First, express the given quadratic equation to its standard form. Second, identify the value of a, b, and c. Third, use the expression b squared minus 4ac to determine the discriminant. And lastly, you can determine the nature of roots based on the discriminant. Now let us have our example number 1. We will determine the nature of roots of 4x squared is equal to negative 16x minus 16. So you have to first write the given quadratic equation, and you observe if the given quadratic equation is already written into its standard form. So as you can see, the given quadratic equation is not yet written into its standard form. That's why we have to do the first step we're in. We have to rewrite the given quadratic equation into its standard form. And by writing the given quadratic equation into its standard form, we are to move the linear term, which is negative 16x, to the other side of our equation. Same with our constant term, which is negative 16, to the other side of our equation. So the standard form of the given quadratic equation now will be 4x squared plus 16x plus 16 is equal to 0. Since we already write the given quadratic equation to its standard form, then we can now identify the values of a, b, and c. So the value of a here is positive 4. There you go. The value of b is positive 16. And the value of c is also positive 16. Then afterwards, we have to use this expression b squared minus 4ac for us to know the value of our discriminant. So we have to simply substitute the values of the following from the formula that we have. So you got here b squared, so you have here 16 squared, minus 4 times the value of a here is 4, and the value of c here is 16. So therefore, this will be now the second expression that you can have. Again, nag-substitute lang tayo based dito sa ating pong discriminant formula. And then afterwards, we are to simplify both of the two expressions of that we have. So 16 squared will give us 256. And negative 4 times 4 will give us negative 16. Multiplied it by positive 16 will also give us negative 256. Okay? Then 256 minus 256 will give us 0. So as you can see, the discriminant value that we have here is 0. Now, for us to determine the nature of roots of our quadratic equation, if the discriminant is equal to 0, again, then we can have here a real and equal root. Okay? Now, let's have the second example. So from the given quadratic equation, we have here x squared plus 4x is equal to negative 3. So again, the given quadratic equation is not yet written into its standard form. That's why we have to move negative 3 to the other side of our equation. So from negative 3, this will now become positive. So therefore, standard form of our given quadratic equation now will be x squared plus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0. Then, let us identify the values of a, b, and c. So the value of a here is 1. You got here an imaginary constant number 1. Then the value of b is positive 4, this one. The value of c here is positive 3. Then afterwards, we have to use this formula or this expression for us to determine the value of our discriminant. So again, magsisubstitute lang po tayo. So you got here b squared, so you substitute 4. So you got here 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3. Okay, so this will be your expression. Then afterwards, we simplify. 4 squared will give us 16, and negative 4 times 1 will give us negative 4, times 3 will give us negative 12. That's why we got here 16 minus 12. And when we simplify, we'll give you positive 4. So the value of our discriminant here is 4. 4, or the value of our discriminant, is greater than 0, and 4 is a perfect square. So therefore, the nature of roots of our quadratic equation is rational but not equal. Okay? So, ang value ng ating discriminant dito ay greater than 0 at siya po ay perfect square. Kaya po ang root ay rational but not equal. Next example, we got here 3x squared plus 18x plus 9 is equal to 0. Since the given quadratic equation is already written to its standard form, so we'll just simply copy. We don't need to rewrite. Then let us identify the values of a, b, and c. So that the value of a here is positive 3, the value of b is positive 18, and the value of c is positive 9. So we are to use the expression b squared minus 4ac for us to determine the value of our discriminant. So the next thing that you need to do is to just simply substitute. Palitan mo lang po yung mga letters na yan kung ano po yung value nila. Okay, so you got here 18 squared minus 4 times 3 times 9 upon substituting the values of a, b, and c from our expression or formula. Then next, we can now simplify. So 18 squared will give us 324, and negative 4 times 3 will give us negative 12, times 9 will give us negative 108. So 324 minus 108 will give us an answer of 216. So this will be the value of our discriminant. Ngayon, you have to think, since the discriminant is greater than 0, so it's either is 216 a perfect square or not? Meron po ba tayong number na pwedeng i-multiply sa sarili niya na ang sagot po ay 216? Kung meron, we can say that 216 is a perfect square. But we don't have any number that when we multiply to itself will give us 216. So therefore, the value of our discriminant, for example number 3, is greater than 0 but not a perfect square number. So therefore, the nature of roots of our quadratic equation are irrational but not equal. Okay? So I hope that you can still follow on the procedures and also in identifying the nature of roots of our quadratic equation. Next example, let's have to determine here the nature of roots of 2x squared is equal to negative 4x minus 5. So the given quadratic equation is not yet written to its standard form. That's why we have to move our linear term and our constant term to the other side of our equation. Again, if your term will move to the other side, make sure that the sign will change. So therefore, you got here the standard form of the given quadratic equation as 2x squared plus 4x plus 5 is equal to 0. Then afterwards, we can now identify the values of a, b, and c. The value of a here is positive 2, the value of b here is positive 4, and the value of c is positive 5. Now, we are to use this expression for us to get the value of our discriminant. So by substituting the values, we got here 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 5. Then simplify. 4 squared will give us 16. Negative 4 times 2 will give us negative 8 times 5 will give us negative 40. That's why you got here 16 minus 40. And their difference is negative 24. So the value of our discriminant on this example is less than 0. If the discriminant is less than 0, the nature of roots of our equation has no real root. Again, those are the procedures and the steps on how are we going to identify the nature of roots of our quadratic equation, as well as the steps on how are we going to determine the nature of roots of our equation. Now, as for you to try yourself, if you really understand this topic, I want you to do this, try this number 1. So you have to determine the nature of roots of 10x squared minus 4x is equal to 8. So I have here your guide for you to determine the nature of roots of the given quadratic equation. So I hope na gawin po ito because this will test yourself if you really understand this topic. That's all for this morning, and I hope that you learn how to determine the nature of roots of our given quadratic equation. So thank you for listening, and also thank you for watching this video. Thank you and goodbye.